All right, so that's enough of that. Let's actually see this thing do something. If you remember right from last time, for our button to do anything, we do need the onClick attribute. So I'm going to add that now. OnClick equals some quotes. I'm going to call my function run. Pretty unimaginative, but when I click the run button, it running the run function seems somewhat reasonable. Remember, you do need the open and close brackets or parentheses to say, please actually run this function, as opposed to just stare at it and do nothing with it. I do need some function in JavaScript called run, though, for this to do anything. So let's go and add that now. So function run, open close brackets, and then my curly braces. And if you remember right, there's a method called console.log that we could just dump strings to the console with. So I'm going to say hi. And then we're going to put a semicolon at the end of our line, just like we do with all JavaScript. And perfect, I'm going to hit run. Well, what did that do? Well, the answer is you have to open up this console to find out. And if you ignore this while you're typing, it sometimes tries to figure out if your JavaScript is done and then realizes there's a problem. Let me hit clear here and then run again. Notice every time I hit run, it simply logs the message or prints the message hi here on the console. Cool. So our run button is doing something. Not much yet. I'm going to clear this and close this console. Let's do something slightly different. Actually, I will reopen the console because we're going to still use it for a moment here. Let's try to grab the number of students from the input form here. So this says 100, but what if I change this to 80? Like, how do I get that number 80 into my JavaScript? Well, from last time, we used document.getElementById. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to get rid of the word hi and say document.getElementById. And some extra parentheses and then some quotes. Now, what ID do I want to actually get? Well, it's this num students one, right? That's the one I'm trying to get for the moment. So I'm going to say num-students. And then let's run this. Oops. Cool. Notice it grabbed the entire tag. That is what document.getElementById is. Get element, get tag. It's basically synonymous there. It's grabbing this entire thing. So that's not quite what I wanted. What I really wanted was the value inside here. So I'm going to say dot value at the end, just like we did last time. And then save that. You can either hit Control S or click the save button up here if you prefer. But it usually auto saves in a few seconds, but sometimes it's nice just to make sure you're running your latest code. I'm going to click run, and now notice it's only 100. Like last time, if you remember correctly, we noticed that it being in quotes is bad. So for instance, if I try to add the number 1 to this by saying +1 down here, and then I save that, you'll notice what I get is not 101, but 1001. Because JavaScript is kind of interesting like this. If you have a string with quotes around it and you try to add a number to it, it thinks you mean add it to the end of the number rather than treat this like a number and add it mathematically. So the way we solved that last time is just the parseInt function. So hopefully a lot of this is very quick recall of what we did last time. Or recap. Parse int, capital I there, and I'm going to put brackets around the whole thing here, and then save that. Noticed I didn't type my closing parenthesis fast enough. Now I've added it. We're fine. I'm going to clear this just so I don't get to see that. Don't have to see that. Now when I hit run, notice it gives me 101, and it doesn't have quotes around it. It is a number. It can do math with it. Great. And delete my +1 now. So again, document.getElementById just grabs the entire tag here with that ID. We grab the value out of that, which is 100, but it was a string. It had quotes around it. and we want an actual number, so we have to use parse int, which just is short for parse integer, i.e. make this string into a number, integer number, i.e. with no decimal points whatsoever. Integers are whole numbers, negative, positive, 0, things like that. Okay, so I probably don't just want to log this, right? I want to actually put it into a variable of some kind. So I'm going to take this entire line inside the console.log and use, well, on my computer, Control X to cut it. The other option is you can just delete the console.log part and this end parenthesis. I'll do that. That seems nicer. I don't need to log it anymore. I'll instead just assign it to a num students variable. Const num students equals. So I'm calling this const just because I don't intend for this variable to change. Like when I click the run button, the number of students shouldn't be shifting around. I expect it to be constant. I'll just declare it a constant. I could declare it as a variable instead, as we did last time, but for right now, that is not necessary here. Okay, so this doesn't actually do anything yet, but if you notice, if I do say console.log num students now, it does do the same thing it did before. So if I clear this to get rid of the error, notice I am getting the number 100 without quotes. So it is storing the number of students in the variable called num students, all is well there. Now, instead of console.logging it, what if I want to change the wins text to be equal to number of students, just to show that I can actually write to that? Just like last time, I get I make another variable that's going to be the wins tag that I want to be able to set. So const wins tag equals document.get element by ID. And this time it's this wins tag that I want. And I'm actually grabbing the tag. I'm not grabbing the value out of it because what I want to do is set the value. So I'm going to do one more thing here, which is wins tag, which is now just this little span right here. That's what it's equal. And I'm going to say dot inner HTML equals num students. I'm going to get rid of my console.log. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to clear my console and close it. And then let's run this. Save and run. Voila. We have our wins tag being set to 100, just like we wanted. So notice we grabbed the entire value of our inputs and made it a number. We then grabbed just the tag. We didn't do anything special for any outputs we wanted. This is just like last time. We just grabbed the document.get element with document.get element by ID, the wins tag. And then we say wins tag, set the inner HTML. The inner HTML is quite literally this, the inside of that tag, the HTML inside that tag. And we said set it equal to the number of students. That is 100 in this case. Not bad. Now you might object to one thing right now if you're a little weirded out by the fact that my wins tag is constant, and yet I changed it. This is how JavaScript works. We ran into this a little bit last time, but I'll just recall it again. The wins tag itself is always, the variable itself is always going to be equal to the wins span tag. That means I can't later down here say wins tag equals document.get element by ID and like strategy. I can't suddenly change this variable to point to the strategy tag here. If I try to save this and run it, you'll see this little angry red exclamation mark down here, which is like assignment to a constant variable, no bad stuff. So we can't do that, but we can change things inside the wins tag. You might feel a little weirded out by that. You're not wrong. This is the choice JavaScript made for its constant variables. And just so you know, that's what constant means. It means you can't change the variable to point to something else instead, but you can change things inside of it all you want to some degree. So there's rules around that, but just so you know, that's what's going on there. All right, so we at least now have something happening when we click our run button. Now let's make real things happen.